Good afternoon, dear friends. I am Evely, and today I will tell you a true story. Enjoy your viewing. The stars had always beckoned humanity, a symbol of progress and exploration. The first moon landing had been the crowning achievement of mankind, a sign of dominance over nature and the heavens. But with that conquest came a terrible reckoning. An act of hubris, something humanity would later understand to be their greatest mistake. It was not the void of space that they should have feared, but what lay beyond it, waiting patiently for the foolishness of mankind to unfold. It began with the pioneer missions, unmanned probes launched into the deepest reaches of space to find new life. But in their pursuit of discovery, the astronauts inadvertently stumbled upon something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. It wasn't until the third mission, the one intended to go farther than any had before, that the first signs appeared. A signal unlike anything seen before. It was not human and it was not random. There was intelligence behind it. The signal was both alien and mechanical, a sophisticated pulse originating from the outer rim of the solar system, far beyond Pluto. NASA's scientists had tried to decode it for weeks. The message was complex, and they could not figure out its origin. The signal came in bursts, and when they finally managed to crack its code, they realized the horrifying truth. It was a warning. A message from a species far older than humanity, warning them that their curiosity would bring them nothing but misery. Then came the ships, large, sleek, and black. They appeared out of nowhere, silently gliding into Earth's atmosphere. At first, people thought they were nothing more than a trick of light, a mirage, a bizarre satellite anomaly. But the ships were real, and their arrival marked the beginning of humanity's descent into horror. No one knew what they were or what they wanted, but what followed soon after proved to be worse than anyone could have imagined. The first contact with the alien race, who would later be known as the Valorians, was terrifying. They were humanoid in shape, standing at roughly 5 feet tall, with smooth gray skin and eyes that glowed a cold, unsettling white. Their bodies were slight but unnaturally strong, their hands tipped with thin, sharp claws. Their faces were devoid of any expression, their mouths unnaturally still, like a mask designed to instill terror. But what struck humanity most was their presence. A dark, pulsating energy that seemed to smother everything around them. They had arrived silently, at first not making a single move to communicate or interact with Earth's leaders. But soon their true purpose became clear. They began to abduct individuals. It was not just the usual probing stories that humanity had feared. It was far worse. Entire families vanished in the night, their houses left empty, their blood-stained floors the only sign they had been there. But as it was soon discovered, the Valorians didn't need to speak to dominate. Their power lay in their minds, in the depths of their consciousness. The aliens communicated telepathically, controlling humans with ease. And as they did, they began to systematically corrupt the minds of the people they captured, turning them into slaves to their will. Women, children, and men alike were transformed into mindless thralls, bound by an invisible tether to their alien masters. The world's governments were quick to act, launching countermeasures to try and repel the invaders, but the Valorians were far too advanced. Any military action against them was futile. Human weapons could not even scratch their ships, let alone harm the aliens themselves. Soon cities began to fall. Major metropolitan areas, once thriving centers of human civilization, became nothing more than ghost towns, overtaken by the aliens. There were pockets of resistance, small groups of humans who fought desperately, but the Valorians were relentless. They did not kill quickly or with mercy. No, they made their victims suffer in ways that defied comprehension. They used humans as tools, as vessels for their dark purposes. Women were enslaved, not just to serve but to breed. The Valorians, despite their physical fragility, possessed an insatiable lust for human flesh, particularly the women, whom they saw as nothing more than a means to an end. Their desires were primal, unyielding, and twisted, and they took pleasure in the degradation and abuse of their captives. Children, too, were taken. The Valorians had a strange obsession with human offspring, seeing them as a commodity to be used for both labor and twisted experimentation. The younger they were, the more valuable they became. Children would be subjected to unspeakable horrors, their minds twisted and broken, forced to carry out the aliens' bidding. The older children were forced into subservience, their innocence stolen in the blink of an eye. The world had become a dark, unrecognizable place. Some human resistance groups managed to escape into the wilderness, hiding in remote locations, hoping to regroup and fight back. There were fleeting moments of success. They managed to destroy a small fleet of Valorian ships in a surprise attack, and for a time the resistance grew bolder, even successfully rescuing a few captured humans. These small victories were enough to spark hope in the hearts of the survivors, but it was all a false hope. They did not know it yet, but the Valorians were always one step ahead. As the human race struggled to rebuild its resistance, the Valorians launched a horrific psychological war. They broadcasted images of their successes, showing entire cities burning, humans being led like cattle into the alien ships, and the broken remains of their captives. The message was clear: resistance was futile. The world had already lost. But the worst was yet to come. One by one, the greatest human minds fell to the Valorians' influence. The scientists, the strategists, and even the generals of humanity were twisted into compliance, mind-controlled puppets, used to further the Valorians' goals. They no longer fought back against the alien race. They worked for them, helping them build the empire that would soon rule Earth. In the quiet of space, the Valorians observed and waited. What humanity had once dreamed of conquering had now become their prison. The final days were coming, and they could not escape the inevitable fate the Valorians had set for them. It was a bitter irony that the final human strongholds, once considered the pinnacle of human ingenuity and civilization, now stood as fragile embers in the dark. No longer did the brave astronauts or daring scientists represent humanity's future. Instead, they had become pawns, slaves to the will of their alien captors, their minds twisted and reprogrammed to serve the very beings who had come to enslave them. As the Valorians' domination spread like an unrelenting plague, the survivors, those who still had the courage to fight, were left scattered and broken. They had learned that their previous victories were nothing more than fleeting moments of defiance. The Valorians' power was far greater than they had ever imagined. Their telepathic control could not be easily resisted, and soon, the resistance began to dwindle, unable to match the aliens' merciless onslaught. The Valorians had mastered the art of psychological warfare. They did not need to slaughter every human to break their spirit. Instead, they turned humans against each other. Families were torn apart, forced into submission as they watched helplessly while the invaders took their loved ones. Fathers forced to watch their daughters be subjected to unspeakable horrors, mothers losing their children to the Valorians' dark, twisted desires. The Valorians had no mercy. Their lust for human flesh was as insatiable as their hunger for power. They took what they wanted without hesitation, but they did not simply conquer through brute force. They twisted humanity's deepest fears and weaknesses, using them as tools of manipulation. They played on the primal instincts of the human race, turning them into terrified shells of what they had once been. Women, once the heart of human society, were the most vulnerable. The Valorians' lust for human women was unmatched. It was not just the physical domination that terrified them. It was the psychological torture that came with it. The Valorians would use their telepathic powers to break the minds of their captives, to bend them to their will. They would force the women to serve, to breed, to become nothing more than vessels for the Valorians' grotesque desires. There were stories of entire villages, entire cities, where the women were abducted, violated, and turned into nothing more than mindless drones. The children were no better off. The Valorians were obsessed with them. They saw them as a means of control, of furthering their empire. They used the children for unspeakable purposes, forced labor, experiments, and worse. The youngest were molded into obedient tools, their innocence stripped away as they were conditioned to serve their alien masters. The older children, particularly the boys, were turned into hunters, trained to track down any remaining survivors. There was no refuge, no escape from the Valorians' gaze. But the worst of all was the absolute hopelessness that gripped the survivors. As humanity tried to regroup, they realized they had no real hope of defeating the Valorians. Their weapons were useless, their numbers dwindling. Even their most brilliant minds, those who had once charted the stars and unlocked the mysteries of the universe, were now enslaved to the Valorians' whims. The few remaining free humans were like rats, trapped in a corner with nowhere to run. The Valorians had not just conquered Earth, they had broken humanity's spirit. They had twisted the human race into something unrecognizable. The survivors were no longer fighters. They were broken, terrified beings who lived in constant fear, forced to comply with the Valorians' every command. Resistance was not just futile. It was an illusion that they could no longer afford to entertain. But there were a few among the survivors who refused to bow. They knew that their situation was dire, but they would not give up without a fight. They formed secret alliances, hidden within the crumbling remnants of cities, and began to plan a final rebellion. They knew that the Valorians' greatest strength lay in their control over human minds, and they began to study ways to break the telepathic bond that enslaved them. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble. They had learned of an alien artifact, an ancient device capable of severing the psychic connection between the Valorians and their thralls. It was said to be hidden deep within the remains of an ancient city, lost to time and memory. This was humanity's last hope. If they could find it, they might have a chance to break free. But there was no time to waste. The Valorians were closing in, and the survivors knew that if they failed, they would be doomed forever. The journey was perilous. The survivors trekked across desolate landscapes, avoiding Valorian patrols, navigating through crumbling cities that had once been symbols of human achievement. They faced untold horrors along the way, aliens lurking in the shadows, scavengers who had once been human, now twisted and warped by the Valorians' influence. And yet, despite the overwhelming odds, they pressed on, driven by the slim hope that they could somehow change the course of history. They reached the ancient city, a place once bustling with life, now reduced to rubble. The artifact was rumored to be hidden beneath the ruins of an ancient temple, and the survivors fought their way through the crumbling streets, desperate to reach it before the Valorians did. But as they neared the temple, they realized with chilling certainty that they were too late. The Valorians had anticipated their every move. They had been watched, monitored from the moment they left their hiding places. The Valorians were far too advanced, their minds too powerful, and the survivors had walked straight into their trap. The final battle was upon them, only it wasn't a battle at all. It was a massacre. The Valorians surrounded them, their cold eyes glowing with predatory glee. The survivors fought bravely, but it was hopeless. They were outmatched, outclassed, and utterly broken. The Valorians did not fight for sport. They fought to extinguish the last remnants of human resistance. One by one, the survivors were taken, their minds crushed beneath the Valorians' will. And so, humanity's last hope was extinguished. The aliens claimed their victory. The human race, in all its brilliance and ambition, was no more. What remained was a world twisted by the Valorians' dominance, a place where hope had died and darkness reigned. In the end, humanity had learned the cruelest lesson of all: space was not the final frontier. It was their grave. Thank you for watching. Support me with a like and a subscribe. Thank you. See you in another video. Bye.